Hello, my friends, and welcome back to English on Point podcast, the quiet space where we don't just study English as a foreign code to be cracked or a performance to be perfected, but as a living bridge that connects us to new worlds, new people, and ultimately to deeper versions of ourselves. And I'm Maya, sitting here with the late afternoon light spilling through the window, thinking about all the times I've stood on the edge of a conversation in English, heart pounding, palms sweating, not because I didn't know the words, but because I wasn't sure I had the right to speak them, as if fluency were a club with a locked door and I hadn't been invited in. And yet, through years of stumbling, showing up imperfectly, and slowly learning to trust my own voice, I've come to understand something gentle and true, that belonging isn't granted to us by native speakers or perfect pronunciation. It's claimed by us the moment we decide that our perspective, our story, and our accent have value. And it's this quiet revolution of self-worth that Leo and I want to explore with you today. The moment you stop asking for permission to speak and start speaking because you know deep in your bones that you belong here.
That's so beautifully said, Maya. And it lands because I know that feeling too. That ache of standing outside the circle, listening to laughter and rapid fire jokes you can almost, but not quite follow, and wondering if you'll ever move from observer to participant, from guest to friend, from learner to speaker. And what I've learned since is that the door was never locked, it was always open. And the only thing holding me back wasn't my grammar or my accent, but the quiet lie I believed that I had to earn my place through perfection, when in truth, belonging is giving freely to anyone who shows up with openness, curiosity, and the courage to say, here I am, exactly as I am. And today, we're going to talk about how to step through that door, not with flawless English, but with your whole imperfect, beautifully human self.
Exactly, Leo. And before we go any further, I want to invite you, the listener, to take a deep breath with us right now. Not to prepare for a lesson, but to settle into this truth. You are already enough. Your English is already valuable, and your voice is already needed, even if it shakes, even if it stumbles, even if it carries the melody of your mother tongue beneath it. Because the world doesn't need another copy of a native speaker, it needs your unique rhythm, your cultural wisdom, your fresh way of seeing things. And as we speak today, I hope you'll hear not just techniques, but an invitation to stop shrinking, to stop apologizing for your accent, to stop waiting for a day that may never come when you'll feel, quote, ready, and instead to claim your seat at the table today, right now, with all your beautiful imperfections. Because belonging isn't something you achieve, it's something you choose.
So let's begin by naming the invisible wall so many of us face, the myth of the native speaker as the gold standard of English, that flawless, accentless voice that seems to glide through every conversation with effortless grace. And while this ideal is held up everywhere, in movies, in exams, in our own heads, the truth is that this ideal is not just unrealistic, it's deeply misleading. Because real English, the English spoken in homes, cafes, and workplaces around the world, is messy, accented, full of slang, interruptions, and ums. And it belongs not to one culture, but to a global community of speakers who have made it their own. And when you release yourself from the burden of sounding like a native, you free yourself to sound like you, a speaker of English with a story only you can tell.
And this shift from how do I sound like them to how do I express myself clearly and kindly is where real belonging begins. Because connection isn't built on perfect grammar, it's built on authenticity, on the shared human experience of trying, failing, and trying again. And the moment you speak from that place, you stop being a tourist in the English speaking world and start becoming a citizen of it. Not because you've erased your origins, but because you've brought them with you as a gift.
Let me tell you about a young man named Kenji who moved from Osaka to Vancouver for work. And for the first year, he spoke as little as possible in meetings, terrified that his Japanese accent would make him seem less competent. Until one day, during a team brainstorm, he shared an idea in his own words, clearly, thoughtfully, with a slight accent. And his manager said, "Kenji, that's brilliant. Thank you for that unique perspective." And in that moment, Kenji realized that his accent wasn't a flaw. It was a fingerprint, a marker of his journey. And from that day on, he spoke not to hide his origin, but to honor it. And his colleagues didn't just accept his English, they valued it because it offered something their own voices never could.
And then there's Fatima, a nurse from Cairo who now works in London, who used to rehearse every patient interaction in her head, terrified of making a mistake, until she learned that what her patients needed wasn't perfect English, but kindness, clarity, and presence. And so she began to speak slowly, with warmth, using simple words and steady eye contact. And her patients didn't just understand her, they trusted her, because her English wasn't flawless, but it was human. And that humanity built a bridge that perfect grammar never could.
And this is the secret so few learners are told. Your accent is not a weakness, it's your signature. It tells the world where you've been, what you've lived, and how you've grown. And in a global conversation, that signature is not a barrier, it's a bridge. Because when you speak with your accent, you're not just using English, you're expanding it, enriching it, making it more beautiful and more human.
So, how do you actually step into this kind of belonging? How do you move from silence to speech with confidence? It starts with small, brave acts of participation, using phrases that invite connection rather than performance, like, "That reminds me of something similar in my country," or "I'm still learning, but here's how I see it," or simply, "I'd like to add something." And these aren't just words, they're declarations of your right to be here. And every time you use them, you reinforce the truth that your voice matters.
And it's also about releasing the need to be understood perfectly. Because real conversation isn't about flawless transmission, it's about mutual effort. And most native speakers are happy to slow down, rephrase, or clarify if you ask with kindness. And in doing so, you're not showing weakness, you're modeling the very patience and generosity that makes belonging possible.
But perhaps the most powerful shift is internal, changing the story you tell yourself about your English. From "my English is broken" to "my English is becoming." From "I don't belong" to "I am building my place here, one word at a time." And this isn't just positive thinking, it's identity work. Because the way you speak about yourself shapes the way you show up in the world. And when you speak to yourself with kindness, you give yourself permission to take up space.
So, as we come to the close of our time together today, I want to leave you with this. You don't need to wait until you're fluent to belong. You belong now. Your voice is valid now. Your perspective is needed now. And the world is waiting, not for a perfect speaker, but for you, with all your beautiful, accented, imperfect human truth.
So take a breath, my friend, and know that every time you choose to speak, you're not just practicing English, you're practicing belonging. And every time you share your story, you're not just using words, you're weaving yourself into the fabric of a global community that is richer because you're in it.
If this resonated with you, we'd be honored if you'd share it with someone else who's standing at the edge of the circle, wondering if they belong. And if you'd like to keep walking this path with us, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And in the comments below, tell us, one thing I'd love to share in English is blank, because your words have the power to give someone else the courage to step forward.
Thank you for listening with your whole heart today. You are more than enough, just as you are.